Okay, we're on the air. I'm going to wait a few minutes to see if we get some more people online. Um, this is a new podcast that I'm using, a new service, and we will see what happens here. It's not quite 6 o'clock, but we're close to it. Starting early so people that come to the site will see that I'm live. You look at the indicator, it says live. Um, and if there's no live indicator, that means the podcast is done. So we're going to wait a couple more minutes and see what happens here. There's going to be some growing pains with this new service. I got to get used to it. You guys got to get used to it, and we can try to get this worked out. See how it's going. So I'm looking at the website. It does say live, so it should be okay. And we're 6 o'clock now, and I'm going to go ahead and start the podcast. I will log in a little bit early, a minute or two early each podcast, so people can come to it, get adapted to it, and move on. So, all right, this is tonight's. Good evening, everybody. This is Marty's from Dawgs blog in the tonight's podcast to the Frank Carson et al. Trial. October 16th, 2018. Tom's report is up from this morning. We have noon report is up, and that was also done on this site, on this Spreaker.com. Everything will be, so there won't be a different URL to come to every day. It's the same URL. You just come, you go to episodes, and you, Spreaker.com, Dawgs blog, go to episodes, and you can listen to older episodes, or you can listen to live if you're out there listening right now. So anyway, they continued. They didn't finish the motion hearing this morning, so they continued that this afternoon. As typical, they can't get anything done, and one reason in part for that, because court was supposed to start at 9 o'clock, and it started around 9:40. Judge didn't show up until 9:30, and so this is part of the problem. They can't get things done. Melissa Ferrara was continuing her argument from this morning. She says the motion should not be granted unless there's prejudice that has been done to the defense, and there has to be irreversibly damaged. So she's saying there's no remedy. The defense has had plenty of time to review the facts and can recall witnesses. There was no outrageous conduct. So she's saying that if the DA didn't do anything wrong, they had the information. They can call Jim Cook back anytime they want, and do redirect on him. Somebody sent me a message here. Yes, the podcast is live. Somebody just asked me a podcast not live, and I'm going to send them a message. This is part of the growing pains that we have now. Somebody else sent me a message too. Okay. Anyway, she said there was no gain by the prosecution. The defense has lost nothing, so there's no need for even a remedy here. She cited some case law, and she said the facts are clear in this case. There's no overlap of the case law. Brady can be exculpatory or impeachment. Now, Brady, when they say Brady, they're talking about Brady information, which is discoverable information that could be something that would help a defendant in his case. Like if there was, they had information that somebody had punched a time clock at work 200 miles away, that'd be Brady information. You know, when they hide it, then that's where these type of problems come in. They have an obligation to turn that over. That's not what happened in this case. I'm just giving an example. but Brady can be exculpatory or impeachment, but then it means that it shows that somebody um, isn't telling the truth exactly. For in his example, it's Jim Cook. There's information that the defense is claiming that he lied, and the prosecutor knew about it. She says it goes by the characterization of the evidence. The impeachment of Jim Cook on August 22nd, 2018. The impeachment was on the 22nd. They were in the afternoon session, so the impeachment that they're referring to was in the afternoon section, and they were allowed to cross again on the 23rd. Now, to remind everybody, just in case, the Marlissa Ferrer on August 21st, after Jim Cook got cross-examined in court on regards to Google mapping, if he used maps to validate his work or to clarify his work, he did not. He says he never used it. He went home that night and he sent Google Maps mapping to Marla Ferrer. He sent 2 maps in regards to the Frank Carson property. Those maps also showed that Frank Carson property was, according to Google Maps, 3 degrees out of that sector that Jim Cook kept saying, that cell phone sector that Jim Cook saying that it was in. Okay. Now, with the defense is also saying with that 10 to 15 degree variable in the overlaps, that's where the sectors of each cell tower overlap each other, there's 10 to 15 degrees. So the defense is saying that could be up to possibly 18 degrees because there's already 3% there. There are 3 needs for, the DA is saying there's 3 needs for misconduct. It does not impeach, she said it does. It was disclosed. She turned it over. She said it doesn't impeach Jim Cook. Part of the allegations being made by the defense is that the DA also did not reveal on the 22nd of August, the day after she received those 2 additional maps from Jim Cook the night before, everybody's having a hard time. This is going to be a little painful here. You go to the link episodes and you'll see it says live. If you don't see it, refresh the page. Okay, and so the defense is saying that she got the new mapping the night before, and she did not disclose it on the 22nd of August after receiving it on the 21st of August. She disclosed it on the 23rd of August. I got another message. This is going to be painful until we figure this out. Go to the link, click on episodes. It says live. I'm looking at it now. So she's saying, Vince is saying she didn't turn it over on the 22nd. When they asked Jim Cook about it, he said he never used Google Mapping, even though he did it the night before. Marlissa Ferrer didn't reveal that she'd received that mapping. So she says it's not a full impeachment because Jim Cook still says he never used it, and the defense already knew about it. This is okay. I got somebody else right in a minute. Sorry. Sorry, I'm on the air. I can't help you anymore. So anyway, So she's saying that it was revealed once she figured out what was going on. So the people request that the motion be denied. All right. Percy Martinez argued there was a motion in limine in regards to Jim Cook testimony. The DA argued some things are not evidence, just argument. So Marlissa Ferreira, one of her things that she said that the defense is not putting out any type of real information. They're just making an argument. They're not getting case law out there, anything like that. The defense argued what happened in court. This is Percy Martinez talking. The DA is talking about what happened in the office and at Jim Cook's home. Now remember, Marlissa Ferreira had gone back to her office with Jim Cook. They tried to do the mapping on her computer in her office. It didn't work. Jim Cook went home, did the mapping, and sent it to Marlissa Ferreira in an email at 7:58 p.m. Percy Martinez still arguing. He says, unbelievably, the Marlissa Ferreira did not take this email, put any priority on it. She has her expert witness on the stand. He sends her an email last night. She said she saw it with some mapping, but didn't take a close look at it because she didn't put any priority on it. So she did not look at the email. She said she didn't. She looked at it about an hour later but didn't really take a close look at it. The DA admitted that she's always it has always been an issue the way he did maps. Jim Cook, a protractor, and he eyeballs it. That's how he did maps. So it's an issue of the way he did maps. He just used a 1950s protractor and eyeballed it, and so the issue is Frank Carson's property is actually not in the coverage area that Jim Cook repeatedly said it was in, and they were talking about vacillating signals and on devices and things like that. That led to all the questions that the defense asked about the protractor, and they used a compass sometimes, and he eyeballed it. So they were looking, and obviously there was a concern there of some sort because Marlissa Ferreira was looking at the maps herself. The diagram is Brady material and was evidence that it was favorable. So he says that she didn't want to turn it over because it was favorable to the defense. Jim Cook had been released from court. He was done testifying on the 22nd. The DA brought him back on the 23rd. At the very least, the defense felt Jim Cook was misleading the information all along, and this made it even worse. On the 22nd, Marlissa Ferreira sat the entire day with no disclosure. Marlissa Ferreira directed how the evidence was submitted in her questioning. Marlissa Ferreira brought Jim Cook back on her own on the 23rd. That was part of the suppression that they're talking about. On 8/21, again, he says Marlissa Ferreira obligation was to disclose immediately that information on August 21st. She should have forwarded that email or something immediately. This has the appearance of impropriety in this massive case. In the Frank Carson property, in which area or which cell tower and which sector was a contested issue all along. Marlissa Ferreira did not think this was significant. That was where the crime scene was, by the way, their theory of the crime scene. One option is Jim Cook's entire testimony be struck if there's no dismissal. Percy was done arguing. Attorney Hans began arguing before the Jim Cook testimony on 22 of 2018. And he was reviewing the transcript of the questions that were in the afternoon. Marlissa Ferreira's arguments misconstruing what had happened and what Brady means and how they relate to each other. They did not exclude defense, but is not what it says. He's talking about the case law that she cited. I don't know exactly what it says, but that's what she was talking about. It is exploitation information. Hans went on to say Marlissa Ferreira could not access the Google Maps at her office, so she didn't think much of it, but did receive that mapping that night from Jim Cook. It came at 7:58 p.m. But she turned around and said the opposite. She would have had monitored it closely if she thought it was more important. It could have been more important. Defense felt it was important. So she kind of contradicted herself in her arguments about the defense. Jim Cook's testimony, and including the 402 hearings, say the 10 to 15 degrees on the overlaps. Here it shows it would be up to 18 degrees out of the sector. That makes it favorable to the defense. The impeachment was when she received it and saw the results. She said she did not think much of it in her argument that does not work. In addition, the 120 tower mistake, the tower is up in the mountains, it's a Highway 120 tower, shows Jim Cook did say he called and got the tower information after he was questioned by the defense. Marlissa Ferreira, this is the type of testimony they've been getting out of Jim Cook. Marlissa Ferreira should have turned over right away. It meant a lot. Asking for a mistrial, or at the very minimum, some lesser remedies. They're asking for a mistrial with prejudice, so what that means is if the judge grants a mistrial with prejudice, the charges would be dropped. With prejudice means they can't refile them again. Jai Goldhill started arguing that this idea that Marlissa Ferreira did not refer to the evidence issue. On Friday, last Friday, he's talking about this last Friday, Judge Inigo told the DA if there was an issue where she thought she wasn't telling the truth or misrepresenting something, she would say so. Today, he says, we are here again. This is Jai Goldhill arguing. Hans had asked about the maps. Then they go to the office, and Jim Cook goes home and does it and sends her an email saying, here you go. And that was on August 21st. It is preposterous she would think nothing of it, of an email from her expert on the night that he's testifying. He submits to the court. She did not think, DA submits to the court that she did not think anything of it. Why would she think anything of it? Was serious. It was from her expert. It must be serious, who's on the stand. DA trying to get around her legal obligations to get an expert to admit what was going on. The impact is huge and means he has to be better than a simple protractor. And what he meant by that is the impact was huge. You have people that are on trial for a homicide case. They're on trial for murder, and you have an expert using a protractor who won't use Google Maps, but then does, and they want to keep it a secret, apparently, is how he's feeling. Jim Cook came to court without his binders, his boxes, all his information, his computers, everything he used to come to court with, that he was prepared to come to court with. He has a real little roller cart and all that stuff that, looks like an attorney. He didn't come to court with any of that. He said he didn't even think he had his glasses with him. He says that's totally different than his previous testimony. He asked that this case be dismissed with prejudice. Judge Zuniga, while he was getting ready to argue his last argument there, Jai Gohel was, she says, we need to hurry and get the jury up. She's pushing. She don't want to hear this argument. She tells them to hurry. Let's hurry up and get the jury up, because the jury's still waiting downstairs. They're supposed to start at 1:30, and it's already after 2 o'clock. Marlissa Ferreira wanted to talk, and Judge Zuniga was trying to say something. Marlissa Ferreira, it'd only take a few minutes. She was really being very assertive, very pushy with the judge, as she always is. And Judge Zuniga finally took her to task and said she needs to stop doing that. Her attitude is not letting her even finish a sentence. So Judge Zuniga wanted to hurry up and get the jury up and get the testimony going again. So that told me there's not going to be a dismissal. If she thought that she was even considering a dismissal, she wouldn't be concerned about getting the jury up. She'd be concerned about hearing these arguments and hearing it out. So that told me that. The DA, as the jury was coming up, the DA insisted on arguing anyway. The issue is two kinds of evidence, examination and impeachment. She already said that. The defense has admitted they had access to the information. On 8/21 of 2018, the defense had the information as there were questions to Jim Cook on that information. So she felt they already knew, which led to her some of the questions she asked the next day. Some of the questions she asked that day and the next day. On 8/22, it became an issue when the questions were asked about Google Mapping, if he ever used it, if he ever checked his work, double spot checked his work. They asked him a lot of questions along that line. So she says they already knew about it, so it didn't need to be discovered. The 10 to 15 degrees agrees. She agrees that that is an issue, that the use of the means by Jim Cook is an issue. She's talking about the protractor and the eyeballing. There is no reason to strike the testimony. There is no prejudice, and the two prongs have not been met. There's 3 levels of misconduct that have to be met, and we talked about that a little bit this morning. And 2 of those levels that have to be met, I believe, is what it has to be done. And she says those levels, there's 3 certain things that have to happen. She says they haven't happened. At this point, Marlissa Ferreira started bouncing in her seat. Out of the blue, she goes off. And now she's complaining that Frank CARSON is making noises from his seat at the table. She says he is a defendant in this case and it's inappropriate and he needs to be stopped. Marlissa Ferreira says it makes the DA look bad in front of the jury. She doesn't need any help with that. Marlissa's saying that they did the right thing in disclosing the information. She was really pissy about it. I didn't see or hear Frank doing anything. I don't know. But he could have been talking to his attorney too. I don't know. So there's nothing that I can add to that. I'm in the way of the back of the room anyway. So at this time, the jury came up at 2:12 p.m. Corey Brown was on the stand. He talked about some of the evidence that was that he took to the Stanislaus from on August 23rd. He received it from Mariposa County Deputy Cherie Hendricks and took it to Stanislaus County SO and took it out again on 9/23/13 and put them on butcher block paper, and he photographed all the items. And that sounds about... No, I was going to say that's the prelim, but it wasn't. So they're showing images of the shirt, and from 4/8 of 16 is when he took some of these out again, took some pictures, and he rewrapped them up again. They showed the picture of the shirt on the overlap. They showed some closer, some farther views. It's a shirt that said loose cannons on it across the top. It had an image of a speedboat that said there was a loose cannon speedboat, and it was from sponsored by some construction company. They zoomed into certain areas of the shirt, and Corey Brown said there was a small circular defect, is what he called them, on the left back of the shirt. Another showed another picture of a circular hole on another part of the back side of the shirt. He also zoomed in on some pictures of pieces of the boot that were packaged together with the shirt. Then they went to some pictures of the Carhartt jacket, and they're just establishing these pictures as evidence is all they're doing. And there was a couple of pictures that defense objected to, but they were allowed in. There was a sidebar. They talked about it. There was a piece of jacket. There was a picture of in the overall jacket. There was in the outside of the jacket. There was what they call 3 defects. There were small holes. And there's some discoloration, but he said that discoloration could also be due to vegetation. It doesn't necessarily need to be blood or anything else. It could be vegetation from where it was laying in the ground up there. There was a view of the back of the coat and that discoloration. There's a close view of the coat, and they had a ruler and showed where those holes were, what they call defects. There was a closer up view of those defects and the discoloration, and again he said that was typically caused by vegetation. There were some more pictures of the jacket. They had a ruler. There's the hole, he called it a 2/8 size hole, 2/8. Well, that's a 1/4 inch on a ruler. And then he moved to another to show the other holes in the third hole. All discoloration, he said, was consistent with vegetation in the area. He talked about, they brought up some other pictures. There was one picture that, for some reason, it didn't match with the screen, and the defense hadn't seen it, so the objection was sustained. And there was a picture of the boots that were collected. They were also, and the lock that was collected from Kevin Pickett. One of the keys on the carabiner where the body was found matched the lock at Kevin Pickett's house. The jeans were in a shabby condition. They showed close-up pictures of the jeans and reverse angles and all that stuff. They were really tattered in pieces. And then there was some a sock, boots, a silver ring, a .22 caliber round, an unfired round, and there was a nickel, 5-cent piece, a spent bullet that was mushroomed, and a close-up of the .22 caliber round. The round had been mushroomed. It was a lead bullet and been mushroomed. They showed a picture on a whiteboard they put up on an easel of the bullet, and there was a pen of some sort. It looked like a writing pen. They put up a picture of the .22 caliber unspent round, picture of the spent round, piece of the jacket, the right side of the hoodie. Some bleaching had been done on that. He says that typically, when it's that color, it's typically from mold or something along that line. There were some cuts from like vegetation or from limbs or something, could have worked their way through it. On the right side of the coat, there were some defects, and again, discoloration from the vegetation. There was a button on the right of the coat on the pocket. On the right side, there was a pocket with a button. They showed a picture of that. And the whole back of the coat that was red and bound with the discoloration, he says again, is probably vegetation. Front of the coat, they showed it was unzipped. The right sleeve was actually pulled out of the coat. It was inside out. And there was two boots, and an insole. One boot had an insole, and these were not insoles that came with the boots. These are extra insoles that you slide into some shoes. The right boot, tongue and inner pounding was missing. There was two screws through the sole of the boot that holding it together, like the boot had come apart, and somebody had ran a couple of screws through it to hold it together. Again, discoloration in small areas on the boot. The left boot was badly tattered and pretty much taken apart by animals in the environment, and some of the laces were missing on that boot, and the sole of the boot was black, and it was dirty, and it was dirty from, he said, dirt and whatever kind of elements are up there. They showed a close-up again of the shoe with the screws. The headlamp that had no strap that goes around the head. It's one of those elastic straps that goes out of the head. There's a headlamp that sits at your forehead, but it was just the forehead part. It was cracked, and the back piece was off. A set of keys with a carabiner, a lock and a key with the lock was open, where his key, one of the keys on the key ring, opened up a lock at Kevin Pickett's house or Corey Kaufman's home. And in one of the wrap bins, they discovered a package of extremely discolored rolling papers. So it had been dragged to a wrap bin or something somehow. The jury was sent out at 2:59 for a break. She has to give the staff breaks. The poor court reporter is just working hard in there, I'm telling you. When they came back from break, Percy Martinez was arguing to the court that the jury, they're unable, the way this evidence is packaged, they're unable to actually view the evidence. Now, we don't really want the jury handling this evidence, but on the other hand, they have to be able to look at it. They have it in cardboard that's shaped like a box, but it's open on the top and on the ends, and they wrap it in clear plastic. So they have it wrapped up, so it's sealed, and it's in, it's probably hazardous material and stuff, so it's safe. So he's saying that the jury is not going to be able to really get a good look at this. Judge Iniga talked about the local rule of court. She says that's only in Stanislaus. There's no law that she can find in the state or even federal that says they have to secure evidence like that. This is a local rule that it must be sealed like it is. There's no state law in sealing the evidence, nor federal that she's aware of. Jai Gohill argued that the jury has a right to examine all the clothes and the jeans and everything, and the boots and everything that are there. So that's something that's going to be dealt with at the time when the jury wants to look at him. She, again, just wants to move forward. She doesn't want to talk about these things. The jury came back up at 3:39. And the DA started her directive, Corey Brown, again. Talking about evidence number 551 and 551A. There is, what that is he, one of them is an evidence bag that had some parts of the boots and can't even read my handwriting here, but it's something, boots and probably the laces or something. There's some things that are separated that are actually go together, like the tongue of the boots. So the inner lining, there's pieces of the inner lining and so on of the boots. Also, the boots has 2 screws. The right boot has 2 screws. And notice the discoloration in the boot, the reddish brown. Again, he says it's probably vegetation. He cut open the box that had this wrap around it that I just described, and he took them out, put some gloves on, and he took them out of that display he had, holding it up right up there on the witness stand, showing the jury the boot. Jury was really interested. I was looking over them, really interested. The boot had a blue liner on the inside, but much of it was missing. He did not recall if there was any discoloration on the liners. But he does see discoloration on the inside and top area of the boot and the outside, also just at the top on the outside. And there's multiple stains on the inside. And the stitching is discolored. The boot stitching is discolored. And the eyelets and other things, that the metal parts of the boots are discolored too. He took out the left boot. That was the right boot he was looking at. Took out the left boot, and there was some staining. He says dirt on the sole from leaves, and the rusted metal on the eyelets, and discoloration on the eyelets, and discolor on the outside. And the inside, there's some discoloration of that left boot. The lining's still intact somewhat, but the insole, again, that's an insole that just slides in and out. It's not part of the original boot. It's partially intact. The insole is discolored, consistent with mold. And there were some, he said it looked like there was some mold inside the boot. He also said that she asked if there were any remains found inside the boot. Was there any bones or any body parts inside the boots? There was not. There was also a piece of the tongue that were inside the boot. It was not attached to the boot. It was just there with the, or I should say, in the box, in the display. And there's, in the leather, there's dark areas, and there's all dark and light areas, and so that he says that's typically environmental concerns that do that. He was asked if he traveled to New York in September 30th of 2013 to talk to Christine DiFilippo. Corey Kaufman had been found prior to that visit to Christine DiFilippo in Brooklyn. She was going to college in Brooklyn, remember. Christine DiFilippo said Frank had sent her with a paper to not talk to law enforcement officers without an attorney. She was not in that possession of that paper at the time that they got there. He said he asked Christine DiFilippo if Frank Carson ever had a gun. She said that he had a rifle that she had seen at one time. So they were starting to wrap things up here, and so she moved all of her evidence, all of her items into evidence. And he said that he also said that on August 14th of 2015, familiar date, that's the day they got arrested, he had moved some evidence from the lockers. He had pulled 21 items out of the evidence lockers and sent them to CDCR high-tech unit. That's California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation high-tech unit. He asked for a forensic exam of that evidence. He did not specify as of yet what that evidence was. But if it's high-tech, it's computers, it's cell phones, it's devices like that. He said he also got a response from Google of any satellite images of 1190 East Street and 838 9th Street. He had asked, he actually subpoenaed them for any images that they may have. He received a compact disc, or it's probably a DVD, and certification from the keeper of records at Google. So those were moving in for the disc with the images. The certification was moved into evidence. They had a sidebar. They broke for the day. The jury was out around 4:10 or so. So they didn't really have a whole lot of time in the courtroom. Just this afternoon they had a little bit of time. So tomorrow the jury's coming in at 10 a.m. Attorneys are going to be in at 9 a.m. She wants to finish this misconduct motion tomorrow morning. So that's we'll see if she can actually do that. She hasn't had good luck on finishing motions throughout this entire saga that's been going on. So that's all I've got. If you have any messages, any questions, send me a message on Messenger. If you have my phone number, send me a text. If you have, send me an email. I get all that while I'm on the air, and I can answer those questions while I'm on the air. And I'm just checking everything now. I don't see anything. The phone calls, I can't do them anymore. Blog Talk Radio just was not functional for me anymore. So that's all I've got. Remember that we have my PayPal button at the bottom of each report. Remember, I have my sponsors, Doug Maynor, attorney at law in downtown Modesto. I have Merced Tile Supply in Merced. They're both good guys. They really are. Need to keep that in mind for your needs that you may have. Remember what I always say. Don't take my word for it. Come to court and find out for yourself. Good night, everybody.